If you clicked on this video because you've been wondering why social media keeps turning normal people into villains, why athletes suddenly act like cartoon characters, and why the internet seems to reward the most unbearable behavior imaginable, then you're in the right place. Because this video is going to give you exactly what you came for. The real reason social media doesn't just change people, it mutates them. And by the end of this, you'll understand why the internet doesn't simply create stars, it creates something far more dangerous. Social media doesn't create champions, it creates extremes. And sometimes, it creates monsters. This isn't a story about talent, it's not even really a story about sport. It's a story about what happens when attention becomes power faster than responsibility can keep up. Because when that happens, the result is always the same. People stop acting like human beings and start acting like brands. And brands don't have morals. Brands have strategies. For decades, success followed a predictable path. You trained, you competed, you failed, you learned. You earned your way up, you proved yourself, you got humbled, you developed discipline, you built real skill. And then, after all of that, fame might come as a reward. Recognition came after achievement. Attention came after proof. But social media flipped the entire order. Today, attention comes first, power follows second, and consequences come last, if they come at all. Because the algorithm doesn't reward discipline, it doesn't reward patience, it doesn't reward quiet mastery or long-term improvement. The algorithm rewards intensity, it rewards conflict, it rewards shock, it rewards whatever makes people stop scrolling. The louder you are, the more visible you become. The more extreme you act, the more attention you receive. And attention is the most addictive currency ever created. Not money, not fame, not luxury. Attention. Because attention can turn into all of those things. Attention can buy influence, opportunities, respect, fear, and even protection. The scary part is that social media doesn't even pretend to care who deserves it. Human beings were never designed to be constantly observed. We weren't built to live under a microscope. We weren't built to be judged by thousands of strangers every day. But now, people wake up and immediately check how many likes they got, how many comments they received, how many views they pulled in, and how much attention their existence generated while they slept. Likes become validation, views become status, followers become authority. And slowly, over time, the brain starts associating attention with self-worth. It starts associating being watched with being important, being talked about with being powerful, being trending with being real. And the algorithm keeps pushing the same message again and again. Do it again, but louder. Do it again, but more extreme. Do it again, but make sure nobody can ignore you. This is how exaggeration becomes normal. This is how arrogance gets rebranded as confidence. This is how provocation becomes strategy. Social media doesn't ask if something is true. It doesn't ask if something is healthy. It doesn't ask if something is right. It asks one thing: does it perform? And if it performs, it gets rewarded. If it gets rewarded, it gets repeated. And if it gets repeated enough times, it becomes your identity. Now imagine combining that system with competition, with money, with ego, with millions of eyes watching. Imagine taking the algorithm and dropping it into an environment where dominance is already praised, humiliation is already part of the culture, and aggression is already celebrated. That's what happened to sports. Sport used to reward performance. Sport used to reward skill. Sport used to reward results. If you were great, you climbed. If you weren't, you didn't. Fame came after proving yourself. But now, sport rewards personality more than performance. Now, the athlete isn't just an athlete. He's a brand, a headline, a storyline. Winning matters, sure, but attention matters more. Because attention sells. Attention builds an empire even if the skill isn't fully there yet. And no one represents this shift better than one of the most controversial figures in modern sports. His name is Jake Paul. Jake Paul didn't rise through traditional sports systems. He didn't spend his entire childhood grinding in boxing gyms. He didn't climb through the ranks the way champions used to. He rose through attention. He rose through controversy. He rose through the internet. Millions of followers, relentless visibility, constant drama, constant headlines, constant arguments about whether he's talented, whether he's a fraud, whether he's good for boxing, whether he's ruining boxing. And that argument alone is proof of his power, because it means people can't stop talking about him. Social media turned provocation into leverage. Every outrage created clicks. Every click created relevance. Every headline created power. Boxing didn't give him a platform, the internet did. And once attention reaches a certain level, it stops mattering whether people love you or hate you. They watch. And watching is the only thing the algorithm understands. That's when attention becomes something bigger than popularity. It becomes a weapon. Because attention changes behavior. When millions of people react to everything you do, restraint starts to feel unnecessary. Boundaries blur. Criticism becomes background noise. Confidence turns into entitlement, because you're no longer living in the normal world. You're living in a world where every action you take creates waves. And once you feel that kind of control, you start believing you're above consequences. Not because you're evil, but because the system trains you to feel untouchable. The system rewards escalation, so you escalate. Say something louder. Act more extreme. Create a bigger moment.
Because silence is punished. If you disappear, the internet replaces you. If you calm down, the audience moves on. If you stop creating chaos, you stop trending. And being forgettable is the one thing the attention economy refuses to forgive. So people keep pushing. They keep testing the limits. They keep trying to see how far they can go. And every time the system rewards them, they learn the most dangerous lesson possible. There is no limit. There is only more. At that point, attention no longer follows reality. Reality starts following attention, because perception becomes stronger than truth. The story becomes more important than the facts. The character becomes more important than the person underneath. That's where the monster starts forming. But here's the uncomfortable truth. This isn't really about Jake Paul. It's easier to believe it is. It's easier to pick one person and label them the problem. It's easier to pretend he's a glitch, a rare exception. But Jake Paul didn't invent this system. He didn't design the algorithm. He didn't create the culture of virality. He simply adapted to it better than most. Social media didn't just make him famous, it made him untouchable. Because once you reach a certain level of visibility, you stop being someone who can be ignored. Even criticism becomes fuel. Even hate becomes marketing. Every attempt to tear you down still feeds the machine that keeps you alive. And the same system that lifted him up would reward anyone willing to play by the same rules. That means the monster isn't the individual. The monster is the incentive structure. It's the rules of the game. It's the invisible machine training people to become more extreme, more arrogant, more reckless, and more shameless, because that's what gets rewarded. And when attention becomes the goal, integrity becomes optional. Sport turns into entertainment. Competition turns into spectacle. Opponents become content. Conflicts become marketing. The line between reality and performance starts to disappear. Because if everything can be monetized, everything becomes staged. If everything becomes staged, authenticity becomes irrelevant. The audience keeps watching, the algorithm keeps feeding it, and the behavior keeps escalating. That's the part people don't want to admit. The monster survives because the creator is clever. The monster survives because the crowd keeps feeding it. The crowd claims they hate the behavior, but their attention says something else. Outrage is one of the strongest drugs ever created. It makes people feel alive. It makes people feel like they're part of something. It makes people feel morally superior. And social media has weaponized that emotion. So now the world doesn't just reward excellence, it rewards disruption, it rewards chaos, it rewards whoever can hijack the conversation and force themselves into everyone's mind. And once you get addicted to that kind of power, you don't want to go back. Because attention is not just validation, attention is control. It controls narratives, it controls money, it controls opportunities, it controls how the world sees you and how the world sees your enemies. When you realize you can shift perception with a single post, you stop acting like a human being and start acting like a ruler. Responsibility becomes a joke. Accountability becomes something you can dodge. Consequences stop feeling real. Because in the digital world, you can always rebrand. You can always pivot. You can always turn backlash into marketing. You can always create a new storyline. And the algorithm will still push you. Because the algorithm doesn't care if you're good. It cares if you're engaging.
That's why the system keeps producing the same type of personality again and again. Not because humanity suddenly got worse overnight, but because the environment is breeding them. If you place a normal person into a system that rewards arrogance, they will learn arrogance. If you place a normal person into a system that rewards cruelty, they will learn cruelty. If you place a normal person into a system that rewards shamelessness, they will learn shamelessness. And if you place a normal person into a system that rewards attention at all costs, eventually they will sacrifice their dignity for it. Not because they're evil, because the reward is too strong. Because attention doesn't just feel good. Attention feels like survival. It feels like if you lose it, you disappear. And the fear of disappearing makes people do insane things. That's why influencers do reckless stunts. That's why athletes start fake rivalries. That's why people humiliate themselves for clips. That's why creators manufacture enemies on purpose. Because they've learned the most important rule of the internet. Peace doesn't trend. Moderation doesn't go viral. Normal doesn't get rewarded. The only thing that gets rewarded is what people can't ignore. And that means the system is constantly pushing everyone toward the edge, toward the extreme, toward the most exaggerated version of themselves, toward the most performative version of masculinity, dominance, wealth, and ego. Until eventually the person isn't playing a character anymore. They become the character. And this is where the real danger begins. The real danger isn't controversy, it's normalization. Controversy is temporary. People get shocked, they react, and then they move on. But normalization is permanent. Every hate watch is still a watch. And the algorithm doesn't understand morality, it only understands engagement. That's why the most dangerous thing here isn't Jake Paul or any influencer or controversial athlete. The most dangerous thing is the fact that the system works exactly as designed. It creates a world where the loudest voices rise, where the most extreme personalities dominate, where the people willing to sacrifice dignity for visibility get rewarded the most. And it's not stopping, because the next generation is watching and learning. They're learning that you don't need discipline, you need attention. You don't need respect, you need controversy. You don't need achievement, you need visibility. That is the monster factory. Not one person, not one athlete, not one influencer. A system that teaches millions of people the same lesson every day. Be louder, be more extreme, be more shameless, be unforgettable. Because in the algorithm's world, being talented isn't enough. Being real isn't enough. Being good isn't enough. You have to be a spectacle. And once you understand that, the ending becomes clear. Social media doesn't create monsters. It reveals what happens when power grows without limits, when attention replaces accountability, when visibility replaces values, when the reward system encourages people to become the most exaggerated version of themselves, until the line between performance and personality disappears completely. And the algorithm? The algorithm doesn't care who wins. It doesn't care who falls. It doesn't care who gets destroyed. It only cares about one thing: what you do next.